Lincoln really seems to be on a roll lately, especially when it comes to luxury SUVs. We have the new Navigator, which is really blowing up the sales charts, and they can't produce enough of them. We have the upcoming and very tasty rear-wheel drive Aviator, and now we have the replacement for the Lincoln MKC, the all-new Lincoln Corsair. The Corsair borrows a lot of the design language that has made Lincoln's most recent SUVs very successful. It definitely looks like a mini Aviator up front with these angry headlamps, a definitely more distinctive and more attractive grille than we've seen in Lincoln's other recent products. And then as we move around to the side, we have what seems to be a bit of visual trickery because the Corsair looks like a big crossover. In fact, a lot of folks initially thought that the Corsair would be sort of a tweener vehicle, slotting somewhere between an X5 and a BMW X3 in terms of overall size, but in fact it's not. This is actually an awful lot smaller than it looks. This is actually 7 inches shorter than an Acura RDX, making this very, very solidly a compact luxury crossover. But it definitely has a very big presence to it, one that I actually really like. If you recall our last review of the Lincoln MKC and our last review of the Lincoln Nautilus, I'm actually a big fan of the way the modern set of Lincoln crossovers drive. I like the fact that Lincoln is now marching to a little bit of a different drummer than the Germans. Part of that is definitely styling. We see tail lamp modules that ran from one side to the other. We definitely have them linked right there in the middle, and an overall look that's definitely a lot cleaner than what we see over at Cadillac, for instance, in the XT4 and XT5. We can't show you what's under the hood, but we can talk about it. The base engine is a 2-liter 4-cylinder turbocharged engine. It produces 250 horsepower. This model right here that we're looking at has the optional 2.3-liter turbo. It produces 280 horsepower. That's a little bit less than a lot of the top-end trims of the competition, but still healthier than their base models. If you were to look at something like a Volvo XC60, you could get 300 horsepower or so in the T6 model and then bump it on up to 400 horsepower later. Don't expect Lincoln to stop at 280 horsepower, however, though. I expect that Lincoln will likely stick a more powerful engine under here in the future, if not a plug-in hybrid system that produces more than 300 horsepower. We just don't know any details about that yet. Very much like we see in the Aviator and the Lincoln, on the inside of this we see the next generation of Lincoln's interiors. Definitely a step above what we see in the Nautilus. There's an awful lot of leather going on. We have these leather accents right over here on the dashboard, real wood trim behind, the same sort of design theme where we have this infotainment screen perched on the top of the dashboard. And then we have this row of transmission buttons right down there at the bottom. That's Lincoln's new theme. They sort of operate like piano keys where you press down on them like that. The controls for the infotainment system and the dual zone automatic climate control are down here as well, which helps hide the USB ports for the infotainment system, drive mode button, cup holders, etc. going on there. On the driver's side, we have one of Lincoln's latest steering wheel designs. The buttons all have lights that turn off so that it has a very clean look when the vehicle is off. We also have a full LCD instrument cluster right there behind the steering wheel and an available heads-up display as well. Now, not everything that you're seeing in here is standard equipment. A lot of these features are going to be optional, especially considering that this is one of Lincoln's least expensive models. But the fact that they've included them even available on this trim, I think, is quite interesting. For instance, we do have Lincoln's latest active seat designs, which move in a million different ways, including having separate thigh extensions, which I've always thought was a little bit funny. I don't have legs that are different lengths, but if you should happen to be in that situation, you can definitely adjust these independently. Bearing in mind that this is a compact luxury crossover, we find compact luxury crossover dimensions in the back seat. This front seat was comfortably adjusted for me, and as you can see, I have a few inches left, but not as much room as we'd find in Lincoln's larger crossovers. Headroom still appears to be generous, even in this model with the panoramic moonroof. I have about 3/4 of an inch of headroom left, and these seats do offer a recline functionality. That was the most recline setting, and then this is the most upright here. It's still a very comfortable seating position overall. Now, as you'd expect in a narrower and smaller crossover, we have a little bit less room in the middle seat than we find in the Nautilus. One other thing that I really noticed back here is that the overall parts quality on the rear doors is definitely a step above the outgoing MKC. We have basically the same attention to detail back here as we found up front. A lot of stitch materials, a lot of soft touch materials going on as well. Although the Corsair is related to the Ford Escape, we actually find a little bit less cargo room back here due to the overall luxury proportions of the Corsair. Things actually got modified a little bit back here versus the Ford. We do still, however, have a spare tire back here, which was available due to the overall platform design, and there are rumors that we may get a plug-in hybrid system coming later. At this point in time, we don't know exactly when the Corsair will be on sale or how much it will cost, but I wouldn't be too surprised if this was less expensive than its mainline competition. That's exactly what we've seen out of the brand new Aviator and of course the Lincoln Navigator as well. The Aviator is notably undercutting the Cadillac XT6, even though it has considerably more power and definitely different driving dynamics. I suspect that we're going to see a lot of that in the Corsair as well. This is going to come fairly well equipped. We're going to get a lot of Lincoln's latest active safety features standard, but not all of them. You will have to pay extra to get things like radar adaptive cruise control or the function that will allow you to use your smartphone as a vehicle key to unlock it, a la Tesla. Those are not going to be standard. But we do, on the other hand, get a high level of standard equipment versus most of the German entries with which you might want to compare the Corsair. And if their most recent vehicles are anything to go by, we're also going to get a ride that is much more comfortable, especially if you select that adaptive suspension system. So if you're after an attractive, comfortable American alternative to something like an X3 or a GLC, definitely put the Corsair on your shopping list sometime later in 2019. In the meantime, hit that subscribe button down there at the bottom of your screen so you can be updated on all of our latest videos, including a full and complete video on this vehicle just as soon as we can get our hands on one. I'll see you later.